Hello, I'm Caede, your guide. We are now at Himeji Castle. In 1993, Himeji Castle became the first Japanese historical heritage site to be registered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That's how impressive this site is, isn't it? Let's get there right away. This shining white castle is also called Shirasagijo, which means white eaglet castle, because it looks like an eaglet in flight. You may have already seen Japanese castles in other places, but Himeji Castle stands out with its whiteness compared to other castles. This whiteness is not just to make it look beautiful, it has to do with its location. Himeji Castle is located at an elevation of about 45 meters above sea level, and the castle tower itself is about 46 meters tall. Because of exposure to strong wind, white plaster is applied to the walls in order to firmly connect the tiles to each other and to prevent fire. This white plaster makes the building appear white and shiny. When the castle keep was unveiled after major repairs that lasted for 5 years starting in 2009. What? It is too white! The unveiled castle keep surprised many people. Actually, the plaster was made in the traditional way by mixing seaweed and lime. So it gradually turns grayish as it gets moldy over time. Therefore, people who knew Himeji Castle from before had seen it in gray rather than white. So they felt uncomfortable with this bright white Himeji Castle. This is a photo taken immediately after the repair. It's true that the color today is already rather different from the bright white. Later, when you go to the keep, let's take a closer look. The plaster on the tile is said to be 3 centimeters thick, so it looks puffy. To get to the castle, cross the Sakuramon Bridge over the moat and go through the old Temon Gate. Then, let's go to the plaza called San Nomaru first. This major gate is also magnificent, but this gate was restored in 1938, and the top of the entrance was high to make it easier for army vehicles to pass through. What? The army and the castle? That's what you thought, right? Here, while viewing the castle, I'll explain the history of castles in Japan, along with the story of Himeji Castle. About 600 years ago, a fort-like structure was built on top of a small mountain called Himeyama, which was the beginning of Himeji Castle. The name Himeji Castle comes from this Himeyama. But because of this whiteness, it seems that it was also called Himeko, which is a type of silkworm. It is true that silkworms are white too. The lord of the castle was replaced by Terumasa Ikeda in 1600, and it took 9 years for the castle tower to take its present form. A total of 25 million people were involved in the construction of the castle. Since the lord of the castle changed many times, you can see the different family crests in the castle. They are interesting to have a look at. New turrets and other structures were added each time that the lord of the castle changed, giving the castle its current overall shape. Japanese castles don't boast the glittering structures of France's Palace of Versailles or Austria's Schönbrunn Palace. It rather were built for war. So fortress might be a more appropriate term for Japanese castles. Here's a little story about castles in Japan. Until the Edo period, each lord built a castle to protect his territory. As the country became more peaceful during the Edo period, castles became places to conduct politics rather than military bases. Then the Tokugawa shogunate issued the One Country, One Castle Ordinance, and many castles were demolished. This action also had the purpose of reducing the wealth of each feudal lord. And in the Meiji era between 1868 and 1912, the remaining castles came under the jurisdiction of the army. Emperor Meiji, who wanted to modernize the country, ordered the destruction of many castles because he considered castles to be a symbol of the old Japan. You can see why Japanese castles were under the jurisdiction of the army. Since they had a strong fortress wall and were ideal for laying out camps. Although Himeji Castle was spared from the decree issued by Emperor Meiji to demolish the castle, the army jurisdiction remained the same. An infantry corps was stationed in the San Nomaru area where we are now. Because the castle was under the jurisdiction of the army, and because the army was stationed here, many of Japan's castles became the target of air raids by the U.S. Army during the World War II. The urban area of Himeji was bombed twice, and fire bombs landed on Himeji Castle. But miraculously, they did not explode. Thank goodness! There were as many as 20 castle keeps left in Japan in the early 1940s, but the number has been reduced to 12. Himeji Castle is one of these 12 surviving keeps, along with Matsumoto Castle in Nagano Prefecture, Matsue Castle in Shimane Prefecture, and 9 others. Himeji Castle has since undergone a number of major repairs, and today, the beauty of the castle as it was when it was built is still preserved for us. The San Nomaru area is also famous for its cherry blossoms, so in the spring, you can enjoy the view of the castle and the cherry blossoms here. Before entering the toll area, go to the right and go in the direction of the sign that says Old West Pillar. Here, you can see preserved Western Core Pillar, which was replaced during the dismantling and repair of the keep that began in 1956. Since the castle tower of Himeji Castle was built in 1600, 2 large pillars, each measuring approximately 25 meters, have supported the building from east to west through the basement floor to the 5th floor. But this western central pillar was in such a state that it had to be replaced during repairs in 1956, and the original pillar is on display here. The pillars supporting the east side have undergone a bit of restoration and still support the keep today. It's amazing that it has been in service for 350 years. Later, let's take a closer look and see its power. Now, it's time to enter Himeji Castle. Let's go!